I've always been the kind of person who takes pride in my work. I show up early, leave late, and do everything to the best of my ability. For months, things were going great at my job. I had earned the trust of my coworkers and managers, and I was seen as someone who could be relied upon. Everyone knew me as the go-to person if something needed to be done. But there was one coworker, let's call her Emily, who didn't seem too thrilled by that. At first, I didn't think much of it, just small comments, a little awkwardness here and there. But one day, I started noticing something strange. Emily, who had always been friendly, suddenly became cold towards me. I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just a bad day for her. However, it wasn't just a bad day. Little by little, things started happening. Files that I had meticulously organized were gone, and I was being blamed for it. My hard work, my attention to detail, it all seemed to be unraveling, but the worst part. I had no idea why. Was it a mistake? Was I being paranoid? No one had said anything directly, but I could tell. It felt like I was being sabotaged, and the worst part, Emily was the last one seen near the files every time something went missing. My reputation started taking a hit, and I didn't even know what was happening behind the scenes. I was just trying to do my job, but things kept slipping. I knew something wasn't right, but at this point, I had no proof. No one would believe me, at least, that's what I thought until one day, Emily did something that made it impossible for me to ignore any longer. It wasn't until I started seeing more strange things happening around the office that I began to piece it all together. Emily's behavior had been off for a while, but I convinced myself that maybe I was just being paranoid. Everyone has bad days, right? But when things started to go missing, important documents that I had worked hours on, there was no way to ignore it anymore. I was doing everything right. I had always been on top of my work, had a clean record, and was known for my reliability. But suddenly, things started going wrong. First, it was just a couple of minor issues, misplaced files, small mistakes that didn't seem like a big deal at the time. But then, the problems started to escalate. I'd walk into the office, ready to get to work, only to find that my projects had been tampered with or rearranged. Files I had meticulously prepared for clients were gone, and I couldn't even remember the last time I'd seen them. I didn't know who to turn to. I thought maybe I had just forgotten something, maybe I was overworked and just didn't remember where I'd placed everything. It wasn't until I caught Emily acting strangely around my desk that the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. One day, I walked into the office after lunch and saw her hovering near my workstation, looking at my open computer screen. She quickly closed it when she saw me approaching, but I didn't think much of it at first. I figured maybe she was just looking at something by accident, or maybe she was just checking her own emails on my computer, who knows. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the more I thought about it, the weirder it felt. There was something about the way she was acting that was different. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to her behavior, and I noticed more red flags. I'd leave my desk for a quick break, and when I came back, things weren't in the same place. My computer would be turned on, documents would be open, but nothing would seem out of the ordinary. I asked myself, could I really be this careless? But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like someone was trying to cover their tracks. I still didn't have proof, though. That's when things started to take a darker turn. I was working late one night, going through some old emails for a new project, when I found something that made my stomach drop. It was an email, one that wasn't addressed to me, but one that was clearly about me. It was a message from Emily to our manager. The subject line read, "Issues with my name, immediate attention needed." My heart sank. I clicked on the email, cautiously. Emily had been sending complaints to the manager about me, and they were full of lies. She claimed I wasn't hitting deadlines, that I was unprofessional, that I wasn't following company procedures, things that were completely untrue. She even went so far as to accuse me of misplacing documents, the very same ones that I knew were mysteriously disappearing from my desk. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen in disbelief. How could this be happening? How could someone I thought was a coworker, a colleague, be actively trying to ruin my career? But the email wasn't just a one-off. It was part of an ongoing series of messages where Emily had been secretly undermining me. She had been planting doubts in the manager's mind, and here I was, clueless. This was a full-on scheme. I had been so focused on my own work, I hadn't even realized what was happening behind my back. Emily was plotting my downfall, and I had no idea. I was sitting there, feeling completely blindsided. I had no idea how to handle this. What could I do? Go to the manager with the email? But Emily had been careful, subtle. She never outright accused me to my face. It was all behind the scenes, in emails, in whispers to the boss, things I couldn't easily prove. The worst part was, I didn't know who to trust anymore. Emily had everyone fooled. She was the charming, friendly coworker who everyone thought was just a little too helpful, but now I knew it was all part of the act. She was playing the victim, making me look like the problem, and I had no idea how to fight back. My reputation was on the line, and I was completely in the dark about how to stop her. What would I do next? Would anyone believe me? How could I expose Emily without looking like I was paranoid or just trying to make excuses for my own mistakes? As I sat there, my mind was racing. Emily had built this web of lies, and I was trapped in it. I couldn't let her get away with this, but I had no idea how to turn the tables. The next move was crucial, but it wasn't going to be easy. I knew I had to be smart, calculated. But I had to act quickly, before Emily's manipulation became a permanent stain on my career. It's strange how life has a way of giving you exactly what you deserve, even when you're too caught up in the chaos to notice it. At first, I was consumed with trying to figure out how to fight back against Emily. I had no clue how I could expose her without looking like I was paranoid or just trying to cover up my own mistakes. She had done everything so carefully, so subtly. There were no hard proofs, no overt signs of her sabotage. Just tiny, almost imperceptible things that chipped away at my reputation. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't have seen coming, was that karma was already in motion. And it was about to hit Emily harder than she could have ever imagined. It started one day when I overheard a conversation in the break room. Two of my coworkers were talking about a new project coming down the pipeline, one that Emily had been vying for. She had been going on and on about how she was the best person for the job, how she had the experience, and how she could handle everything. I couldn't help but listen in, and as I heard them talk, I realized something. Emily wasn't as perfect as she made herself out to be. She didn't have the skills she claimed she did, and she was hiding her incompetence behind a facade of charm and manipulation. I thought back to the email I'd found, the one where she had been painting me as the problem while she quietly undermined me. And I realized that the reason she was so focused on sabotaging me was because she was terrified that I'd be better than her. That's when the first piece of karma clicked into place. Emily was playing a dangerous game, one where she thought she could climb to the top by pushing others down. But people like Emily always leave a trail behind them, and it's only a matter of time before someone picks up on it. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, but I wasn't going to make a rash move either. I had to be smart. I started working harder than ever before, making sure my work was impeccable, and keeping my interactions with my boss and coworkers professional. I had to ensure that my side of the story was solid, that when the time came, no one could question my integrity. And, oh, how the tables turned. Emily's little scheme began to unravel slowly but surely. She began to get careless. It was almost like she was so confident in her manipulation that she stopped covering her tracks. She made mistakes, and those mistakes started to pile up. People who had once admired her began to see through the act. It wasn't long before she was exposed. Her incompetence was undeniable, and her manipulation tactics were clear for all to see. The truth started to spread. People who had once been on her side started backing away, and my manager, who had been swayed by Emily's lies, began to realize how badly she had misled him. The project that Emily had been desperately trying to get her hands on. It was reassigned. And guess who was asked to take over? Me. It felt surreal. One moment, I was the one fighting to save my reputation, and the next, I was being given the very thing Emily had been desperately trying to steal from me. The promotion that she thought she had locked down, the recognition she thought she deserved, was now mine. I couldn't help but smile to myself. Karma had found its way to Emily, and it was beautiful. But the best part of it all, Emily didn't even see it coming. She had been so focused on trying to bring me down that she didn't realize she was digging her own grave. The more she tried to sabotage me, the more she exposed her own weaknesses. It was almost poetic. And as I sat there, ready to take on the new project, knowing that it was all because I had kept my head down, done my job, and let karma take care of the rest, I couldn't help but think back to all those moments when Emily thought she had won. When she thought she had me cornered. I could have reacted. I could have gone to the boss with everything I knew, but I didn't. I let her play her game, and when she had nothing left to hide behind, that's when the truth came out. The best part, I knew that my success wasn't based on undermining anyone else. I didn't have to sabotage anyone to get ahead, I just had to be patient and let karma work its magic. And trust me, it worked. As Emily watched me take over the project she had wanted so badly, as she realized she had been outplayed by someone she underestimated, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. It was a feeling I'll never forget. I had been on the receiving end of her manipulation, but I wasn't going to let her win. Not now, not ever. And the sweetest part of it all, Emily knew she had lost. She could see that the game was up, and no matter how much she tried to cover up her tracks, it was too late. Karma had already taken its course, and there was nothing she could do about it. She might have thought she had all the power, but in the end, it was the quiet, steady person, the one who just kept working hard, doing their best, and not playing dirty, who came out on top. And trust me, it felt so good. But the story doesn't end there. There's one last twist I haven't told you yet, one final part of the story that will leave you speechless. It's funny how life has a way of flipping the script when you least expect it. Not too long ago, I was just another employee, a cog in the wheel, trying to keep my head down and avoid drama. But Emily's constant efforts to sabotage me had a way of putting me in the spotlight, even when I didn't ask for it. At first, all I could think about was how to survive, how to prove that I wasn't the problem. Little did I know, the more she targeted me, the more it was pushing me toward the very thing she was trying to take away from me, control. When the promotion came up, I knew it was an opportunity. It wasn't just about the title or the salary bump. It was about proving something, not just to Emily, but to myself. I had spent months being quietly undermined, always having to clean up messes she'd left behind, and dealing with the petty sabotage she'd been running behind the scenes. But now, the ball was in my court. The higher-ups had noticed my consistency, my dedication, and the fact that despite everything, I had been delivering results. I wasn't the loudest or the most vocal, but I had earned my place. And then there was Emily. She was the loudest, the one who made sure everyone knew her plans, how she was destined for that promotion. But the more she boasted, the more people saw through her act. They started to realize what I had known all along, her competence was built on lies, and her manipulation was just a smokescreen. She wasn't who she claimed to be. She wasn't the top performer she always portrayed herself as. Slowly, the respect she once commanded began to fade. It was becoming clear that people weren't buying her story anymore. Her manipulation had worked for so long because no one really questioned her. But now, with all the pieces falling into place, they started to see what I had been enduring for months. She had always been the center of attention, the one who got all the praise for the work I did. But now, they were seeing the cracks in her facade. And the timing was perfect. Emily had no idea what was coming. She thought she had the promotion in the bag. She had been working every angle, making sure she was the one who got the credit for every success, every small win. She had managed to convince so many that she was the future of the company, that she was the one who could bring the team to the next level. But when it came time for the higher-ups to make their decision, something unexpected happened. I got the call. "We've decided to offer you the promotion," they said. It was a moment of shock. I couldn't believe it. For so long, I had been overlooked, dismissed as someone who wasn't a threat. And now, the very thing Emily had worked so hard for was mine. I remember sitting there, holding the phone, not knowing what to say. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about the promotion, it was about everything that had led up to this moment. It was about the struggle, the silent fights, the late nights spent fixing problems that shouldn't have been mine to fix. It was about the way Emily had underestimated me. It was about showing everyone that there was more to leadership than just making noise. And now, it was my turn to take the lead. When I walked into the office the next day, the look on Emily's face was priceless. She had no idea. She had been so confident, so sure that her manipulation would work, that she didn't even see what was happening right in front of her. She was still holding on to her belief that she was the one who deserved the promotion, that she was the one who had the most potential. But as she watched me walk into that meeting room, the one where the announcement was being made, she realized everything she had worked for was slipping through her fingers. She knew the moment she saw the look on everyone's faces that the game had changed. And that's when the real power shift happened. It wasn't just about the promotion. It was about the fact that I had outsmarted her. I hadn't needed to stoop to her level. I didn't have to play dirty or manipulate others to get ahead. I had just done my job, day in and day out, and when the time came, it was my dedication, my work ethic, and my integrity that got me the promotion. Emily, on the other hand, had built her career on false pretenses, and now it was all coming crumbling down. As the news spread around the office, the whispers began. Everyone had their opinions, but deep down, they all knew who truly deserved the position. And it wasn't Emily. The satisfaction I felt wasn't about rubbing it in her face. It wasn't about gloating. It was about the realization that hard work, consistency, and staying true to yourself would always win in the end. Emily had tried to manipulate her way to the top, but in the end, it was her own actions that led to her downfall. And when I finally took my seat in that new position, when I officially became her boss, it felt surreal. But what made it even sweeter was that I knew I had earned it. No shortcuts, no manipulation, no sabotage, just hard work. It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for anyone who had ever been underestimated, for anyone who had ever been the target of someone else's schemes. This wasn't just about taking a promotion, it was about taking back control of my own narrative. Emily had spent so long trying to control everything around her, but in the end, it was her own arrogance, her own sense of entitlement, that led to her downfall. And now, she was left watching me take the very thing she had thought was hers. But karma, as they say, has a beautiful way of showing up when you least expect it. And just like that, Emily's ambition, her thirst for power, had brought her nothing but defeat. But the story doesn't end there. There's more to this journey. There's a final twist, something that'll make you see how everything came full circle. So, there I was. A month had passed since the promotion, and life had taken a full turn. Emily, once the ambitious woman who seemed unstoppable, now had to report to me. There was an undeniable sense of satisfaction that came with watching her, knowing that all her manipulation had led her straight into my hands. But here's where things got interesting. I wasn't going to treat Emily the way she had treated me. I could have easily played the power card. I could have made her life miserable, made her regret every underhanded thing she'd done to me. That's what most people expected. They wanted to see her squirm. But that wasn't my style. Instead, I decided to take the higher road, to manage her with a level of kindness and professionalism that she had never shown me. And believe me, it wasn't easy. Every day, I had to remind myself that the person I was now dealing with was not the person who had tried to sabotage me. She was, at that moment, my colleague. My responsibility. The team's success depended on how I managed her, and I wasn't about to let personal feelings get in the way of that. The first few days were awkward. Emily didn't quite know how to act. She was still processing the reality that I was her boss, and she didn't quite know how to handle it. She tried to test the waters, still hanging on to her old ways, trying to manipulate situations in her favor. But each time she did, I handled it with calm and composure. No drama. No shouting matches. Just clear communication, setting boundaries, and being transparent. And as the days went on, something unexpected started to happen. Emily started to soften. She began to realize that I wasn't going to treat her the way she had treated me. I didn't want to be her enemy. I wanted to be her colleague. I knew that in order for her to succeed, I had to support her, even if it meant swallowing my pride and putting my personal feelings aside. The real twist, though, came when I started seeing changes in her behavior. Slowly, over time, she stopped playing her old games. She started working harder. She started taking responsibility for her actions. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of tension, but there was a shift. And it all came down to the way I chose to handle things. By being the bigger person, I turned the situation around. I didn't just rise to the occasion, I created an environment where she had no choice but to grow. In managing her with kindness, I gave her the opportunity to redeem herself, to prove that she was capable of being more than the petty, self-serving person she had once been. It wasn't about me getting revenge or making her pay for what she had done. It was about turning the negative situation into something positive, for both of us. But here's the kicker. In the end, Emily didn't just change for the better. The whole team did. My leadership style, focused on understanding, patience, and kindness, set the tone for the whole department. People started to feel like they were more than just workers, they felt valued, respected. Productivity improved, morale soared, and the team dynamics shifted in a way that everyone noticed. Emily's growth wasn't just a victory for her, but for all of us. She started showing up differently. The same woman who once thought she was above everyone else was now the person I could count on for collaboration, and our working relationship became stronger than I ever thought possible. The respect we had for each other began to grow, and with it came better results from the team as a whole. It felt almost surreal watching someone who had once tried so hard to bring me down become a stronger ally. The satisfaction came not from watching her fail, but from seeing her succeed, and knowing I had a hand in that. The satisfaction came from knowing that I had managed her with a kindness that she could never have imagined, but that she now needed to embrace. By doing the right thing, I wasn't just becoming a better manager, I was becoming a better person. It was proof that taking the high road, showing compassion even when it wasn't deserved, was the most powerful move I could make. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Leadership isn't just about power. It's about creating an environment where people can grow, where they can evolve, even if they've made mistakes in the past. And sometimes, the best revenge is showing someone the kindness they never thought they deserved, and watching them rise. The next time you're faced with someone who tries to bring you down, remember this story. Don't sink to their level. Be the person who lifts others up, even when they don't deserve it. You never know, you might just change their life, and yours, in the process. If you liked this story, and if you've ever dealt with a toxic coworker, let me know in the comments. Share your experience and how you handled it. And if you want more stories like this, stories of triumph, lessons learned, and life-changing moments, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the journey. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.